Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and this is an episode that I'm so excited for because I've had the chance to connect with today's entrepreneur even before we hit record for a while, which was so much fun for me because this is someone who not only has an interesting entrepreneurial backstory himself, but he's someone who is making something super accessible to people in the world of privacy, something that is delivering value to people all over the world at a really scalable way. But he's doing that from a place where he had to learn new things and expand new horizons and enter the tech world, whereas his background is as a lawyer. So let me tell you about today's guest. His name is Bart Kaspero. Bart is the founder of Record Fixer, which is an automation platform built to help people with criminal records remove their information from background check databases. Before jumping into the tech world, Bart grew up in Southern California, down in Orange County. Out of law school, he started his career as a court-appointed trial attorney and quickly cranked out over 20 jury trials within his first year. He eventually left to start his own firm and still practices regularly to keep his court skills intact. Now, what I love is that in 2016, Bart's higher calling came to him. And after getting a certification in data warehouse technology, maybe not the twist and turn that you expected from a trial lawyer, but after doing that, he began experimenting with database systems. This eventually led to him building Record Fixer, which you're going to hear about all today, as an experiment for his own clients. Realizing how well it worked, he opened access to the public so more consumers could benefit from putting their privacy on steroids. There's a lot of stuff Bart's going to share with us today. I'm excited about this one. So let's dive in straight to my interview with Bart Kaspero. All right, Bart, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm really honored to be here. So thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. I appreciate you being here, especially because you bring such awesome energy. If people tuned in today saying, Brian, you're having a lawyer on, what's this episode going to be like? You're going to over-deliver, Bart, and I'm excited for it. But first things first, take us beyond the bio. Convince us you're not just a lawyer. Who the heck is Bart? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I jumped down the rabbit hole, Brian. I want to say for 10 years, I was practicing what most people would traditionally call criminal defense. For those of you who don't know, a court-appointed attorney is the one that gets assigned to you if your family or you yourself can't hire a lawyer. So you pretty much touch every case under the sun. And I did that for a while, just like you said in the bio. I cranked out a bunch of jury trials. I went on my own. But there was an itch in the back of my head constantly, and it was the same question asked of me all the time: will this be on my record? Will this be on my record? And forever, even up until now, this is a very misunderstood area of general knowledge, let alone the law. So I went looking through education. And I know a lot of your listeners who are entrepreneurs, take coaching classes, they take coding classes. Some of them, for me, it was I realized how geeky it sounded when you said it out loud. Data warehouse technology is pretty geeky, but it is the language of databases. It's the architecture of databases. And when people say, "Where is my criminal record?" that's pretty much the platform that's being used. Right around that time, I actually started conducting my own research and was compelled to publish in 2016, early 2017, with a co-author, essentially calling out the database management systems as being inadequate to protect people's privacy. It's super geeky, just like your intro about my degree. But it actually validated my idea, and I went down the rabbit hole. I started looking to see what can be built, what can be automated for people. I was very blessed to come across a full stack developer that eventually became my co-founder, my technical co-founder. And now I'm swimming in the world of privacy. I'm swimming in the world of public records and trying to essentially educate the public and anybody I can about how broad of this subject of privacy actually is, because it's one thing to say, is my phone listening to me, or are there satellites staring at me or something like that. It's another thing to find someone's personal information floating around on the internet. A lot of people don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, Bart, there's so many topics that we could dive into today, and for sure we're going to. But I think that obviously at the highest level of looking in on this is really privacy. And you brought it to the forefront there at the end, is that most people probably have no idea how much privacy is eluding them when it comes to the internet. For example, so I grew up in Massachusetts, lived in California for a while, and I've lived here in Florida for a few years now. I didn't realize that in a state like Florida, our addresses are public. In a lot of cases, our personal email addresses, our phone numbers are public as part of our voter registrations. And so that was eye-opening to me. I've since had it removed from a lot of places. But Bart, when it comes to privacy, you're someone who actually works in it at both the legal level and the technology level with a solution that you bring to the market. With that in mind, a lot of people are probably going to have that, and I'm sure you get this as a lawyer, where people are like, wait, so you defend criminals, or you're wiping the records clean online for criminals? Let's talk about privacy, because it's not a criminal element. A lot of people, I saw it on your website when it comes to record fixers, that a lot of people go to court, that will show up on their records, whether they're protected or not, even if they were never actually judged to have committed a crime. And so there's a lot that goes into it. Why do we care about privacy? Especially for those people like maybe 20-year-old me was like, I've never done anything wrong. I have nothing to hide. Why should we care about this?
We should care about it, and it's a fantastic question. A lot of your listeners, I understand, are entrepreneurs, and if they've never been in trouble with the law, they'd probably be thinking to themselves, why should I care as well? But for those who are listening, the topic is relevant to any business owner, any entrepreneur, for anything that you hold close to your heart and pray is not going to be exploited against you. Let me walk everybody down this. So any SME, small, medium enterprise, right? For them to exist, they essentially have to have a business license, a legal entity like an LLC or a corporation, a website, email. Keep going down, and you're going to see all of these endpoints as at one point floating around in a database, some of them private, some of them not so private. From an adverse competitor's perspective, or a future plaintiff who's going to bring you to court, or even a disgruntled client or consumer who's about to leave that famous one-star review against you, this is all what's sometimes referred to in the cybersecurity world as your attack surface exposure. Some of you heard of doxing, right? You say the wrong thing at a school board that somebody else really disagrees with, they'll go down their own rabbit hole and find out everything about you. Negative reviews, whether your emails wound up on the dark web, lawsuits that you were part of that have nothing to do with your business or your consulting practice, divorce records, restraining orders, prior custody battles, all of this personal stuff that we don't want our professional or our personal lives to be affected by. And the reason for this should be obvious. It puts a reputational stamp on us before anyone can make up their minds about our character, before we even open up our mouth, before we even have our first consultation. I work with private investigators almost daily, and I've been told that the only thing that somebody needs is your gender, your zip code, and the year that you were born, and you could pretty much find out anything else about that person if you know where to get the data and how to extract it. So this is something we as business owners cannot afford to ignore, because your digital footprint from your business and your personal life leaves potential clues into the posture or status in the marketplace that you have. It leaves clues about your exposure or your likelihood of surviving a lawsuit if somebody wanted to go into legal warfare with you, right? Maybe an investigation by a government agency if you're not being compliant with something. That's the world of privacy. It's far deeper than criminal records, but I chose to work with criminal records because it was my own subject matter. I was obsessed with it, and obviously there wasn't a solution prior to trying to find a technological automated solution for it.
Yeah, I love that overview, Bart, especially because, one, I mean, if someone came here for the scare factor today, it does deliver. And the scare factor is valid here because it is something that touches literally every single one of us. Like, listeners, that's what we hope you take away from today's episode, is that these privacy components, not even just specifically talking about Record Fixer and the work that Bart does, but these are considerations that we all need to make. For example, I show up here on this podcast 5 days a week, 800 plus times, and I constantly think about the fact that there's a lot of personal details about my life that are exposed in so many different ways by the way I show up. So that's me being on air as much as I am. What can you find about me just on the internet of things that are out there? So I think it's really important for us, whether it's from a personal perspective or Bart, I know that you're also a business junkie, even if it's just from a branding perspective, these are considerations that we have to make. So I want to go a bit deeper into the Record Fixer story, because I love the fact that not only did you do this, and do you continue to do this as a practicing attorney, but you decided, let me come up with a solution that not only works for me and my clients, but can really serve a broader audience. It almost seems some people from a business perspective would say, well, Bart, you are hurting your own business. You're making it more accessible to other people who may not need attorneys like you. Talk to us about the thought process behind that when you realized you were onto something with Record Fixer.
Yeah, it was really exciting actually to see something work. Because as you said in the introduction, this was an experiment. And I just want to, if I don't say it in the future ever again, I want to say now that I want to personally thank my own clients for actually signing up and essentially being test cases so that this can actually be battle tested in the real field. The journey was a long and actually incredibly complicated one that if anybody told me what the landscape was going to look like, it probably I would have talked myself out of doing it. And maybe that ignorance is bliss aspect was helpful to me. But so out of all the 50 states, I had to canvass and index what can actually be hidden or not. Florida is a famous one to this day, as you probably know. Go ahead and Google the word Florida man. And the reason why is because booking photos are very public in Florida. And any kind of conviction, up until only very recently, has essentially been treated as permanent. So every state, everybody has to understand that every state has their own concept of what can be disclosed, what can be disseminated, what can be suppressed, what can be hidden, destroyed, all of that stuff. So that was a monumental task to begin with, and that was a legal research project involving 4 or 5 researchers, including myself. But it was satisfying because once you actually start seeing clues of, I guess you can call regulatory oversight, that could actually be turned into a service. It could be turned into a business. And I don't think it hurts me in terms of my competition with myself or even with other attorneys. There are clean slate laws that are being passed throughout the country, and they are helpful to millions and millions of people, but it doesn't solve it. These databases that people's personal things are held in still float around, and this information gets leaked, and the data ends up in the hands of those who actually do pass judgment on us: employers, landlords. And what most people don't want to hear about is, online dating prospects. They love Googling who's this guy or gal that I'm talking to, and they love paying those subscription fees to people search engines and data broker sites.
Bart, bringing us the real stuff that most people aren't willing to admit or talk about publicly. I love that because it's a real application. It's a real way that it's used. I can personally tell you, anyone who I meet, 100%, I'm a deep Googler. I can find a lot of stuff about a lot of people. And with that in mind, really my background with regards to privacy stuff is I come from the marketing world. And in the marketing world, SEO is a big topic, and negative SEO, negative search engine optimization, is a field that has been growing over time, but it's a bit different from what you're talking about with that data warehouse technology certificate that you have, is because within the world of negative SEO, the question is, how can we choose which things rank above those things that we don't want to be found? Whereas what you're talking about is a bit different. Talk to us about the difference of a record fixer, of, I don't know if expungement, I didn't go to law school, so I don't even know how we're supposed to use the word expunge, but talk to us about how your stuff is different from negative SEO when it comes to us actually having that clean slate.
That is a very astute question. Kudos. 20 points on that. That's you can't I can't tell you how many times I actually have to make that distinction to countless individuals. So bravo on that one. You are absolutely right, Brian. When it comes to stuff popping up, like let's say a Twitter post that you wish you never did, or a selfie that wound up on, some person's like personal website, things like that, negative reviews, all that stuff. That is a subset of the SEO industry, as you know, is sometimes called online reputation management, which is very different than what Record Fixer does. Let me get a little bit technical here. So you did say the word expungement. Expungement is also a creature of state statute. So depending on what state you are standing in, expungement is going to mean something different. So I will oversimplify this without boring everyone with the 50 different differences in state laws. A person who is arrested does not always get charged with a crime. And you can imagine your neighbors getting into a very loud argument. Somebody calls the police. They show up there. Somebody gets taken away. But after careful review by the prosecutor, they just choose not to charge that person with an actual public offense. In most states, in fact, almost all of them, that arrest can be suppressed. The way that you do so is dependent on the state. But a application like Record Fixer is what's going to clean that data off of the criminal record warehouse industry. It's a complicated supply chain that took basically 5 to 6 years for me to map out, along with my co-founder. So the next level above that is people get charged daily in the U.S. and their cases get dismissed. They get programs. They get diversion programs where they jump through a couple of hoops, community service, anger management, and the case gets thrown out. Unfortunately, that data still winds up in a lot of data silos. They still wind up in what's called consumer reporting agencies. They wind up in data broker sites. That also has its next level of privacy. So even though you're seeing this on the front end on, say, certain websites like booking photo websites, things like that, a person's level of privacy can actually increase or decrease based on the status of their case. And finally, you said expungement. That's the final stage. In most states, pardon me for generalizing, but in most states, expungement means that you have now taken away your guilty plea, or if you've been found guilty by a jury, you've now reversed that conviction. So that attaches a brand new level of privacy that you can exploit to your own benefit, and it gives you a whole set of rights actually, to demand your privacy from, one, two, or maybe hundreds of broker sites that harvest that information, and they sell it and they resell it. And what ultimately makes Record Fixer different than others is that we have constant monitoring of somewhere at some point between 50,000 to 80,000 different unique URLs that essentially does change detection, right? These are algorithms that are pretty fancy and sophisticated, but essentially it says, what does the landscape look like out there? And we keep a very close eye on it. We want to make sure we know all the players and all the up-and-comers and all the ones who merge or get taken out of business and change titles. It is opaque to a 10th degree. You have no idea how bizarre it could actually get.
Yeah, I love that. And I really enjoy hearing you talk about these things because that last point you made, which is you're absolutely correct. We don't realize this wild web. And that's why I love colloquially and societally how we use that term of the deep web. Most people don't realize the World Wide Web, www.somewebsite.com, that is only a small percentage of all the stuff that's out there through browsers that I won't name. And obviously we are tech geeks at a really deep level. And so we are at least aware of some of this stuff, but it's really the tip of the iceberg into all the risks that are out there. And when we tie it back to branding, when we tie it back to our personal privacy and all of those things, it's incredibly important topics for all of us to think about, not just life-wise, but I am crossing that bridge and applying it business-wise. I think it's so important for all of us. And for me especially, I remember when I started my marketing agency in 2012, I started that having a background of being a soccer blogger. That was the first business I started when I was 19. I struggled for a bit, Bart. You and I didn't talk about this off air, but when people would Google me to see if I was a legitimate marketer and to see if my agency was good, all they found was all these soccer articles. And I was like, well, shoot, how do I establish my identity as a marketer? How do I move on from my past and have it in a way that enhances what it is that I want to do and not be judged in that way? So I think all of these things are incredibly relevant, which I guess also leads to your own entrepreneurial journey, because you are a lawyer turned tech CEO. That is such a cool transition. And I think that behind it must have been a lot of, one, internal identity questions, but two, a lot of uncomfortable things. Like, you're very comfortable here today talking about tech and legal aspects and business components as well. What was that transition like for you? What were some of those hard things that people probably won't appreciate by hearing you as assured as you are here today with us?
Yeah, let my anxiety leave my body for just a second as I contemplate that question, because that is that was a deep journey. I decided to jump in with both feet, and on this journey of data regulation. Everybody gets excited about that title, right? Wanting to understand these technical concepts was important for me, because people have all sorts of misconceptions about certain professions, and when it comes to law, they think because you have a license, you now know all things about law. Well, if that identity as a practicing attorney can infuse itself into all things technology, that would be great. But nothing is further from the truth. It's a completely different universe. It was not a natural transition for me, because it just wasn't, for the reason I just said, right? It was very difficult trying to get a certification while you're a full-time professional, but it probably would have been a lot more painful for me if I was going to try to solve this in the traditional attorney-client role. Because once you get into the World Wide Web and the billions upon billions upon billions of websites and data points and this world that the general public doesn't jump into, law was not going to be the sword or the shield that was going to help people. It had to be with technology. So I was driven to figure this out first and foremost. That was very important to me. And education, I think for some people, they can just do without learning something. For me, I did really have to get the high level view, and that was very important to me. That might have been a personality thing. Maybe other entrepreneurs can relate to that. But for those who are going into something very different than what they're used to, I don't think there's an alternative to that. You need to say what you mean and mean what you say, and it's better to be accurate if you do that. So it took a lot of getting over the fear of this concept of information technology, the complex world of personal records. I had to go through that journey, and because it was education, I wasn't going to look back. But that was not a step; it was a cliff, and the learning curve was painful and unforgiving. Because when you come into the world of technology, you are dealing with binary information. Either it is or it isn't, and that's literally what's running your Apple Watch. It's what's running this this screen in front of us. It's zeros and ones. So the world of lawyering is, when you get asked a question, you say, well, it depends. That's kind of like the classic attorney answer. That's not going to cut it in the technology world. But once I learned more and more, and thank goodness for my technical co-founder, we found kind of our own, I don't know what other way to say this, our own lingua franca, right? It's like this functioning language that tradespeople used to use in the 1700s or something like that, right? Where not everybody spoke Italian or French or anything like that. There was like a trade language. And that was an important support system for me, because whatever concept I thought was going to work for me, through a user interface perspective, through a functional database perspective, I had somebody who was deep in the trenches who can still communicate with me, and we have that middle ground. So anybody who wants to make that transition into building a platform technology, an automated application of some sorts, maybe even an internal tool it is very important to not just take the first thing that you see in a search engine result and say, okay, I'll go with that dev shop. They may sign you up for a software or a language that works great on a minimum viable product where you have 10 customers. But the moment you reach 100 or 1,000, to transition will cost 5 times as much and will, might actually even be fatal to your business. So as a non-techie turned techie evangelist, maybe a techie convert, which I love and have embraced since, I say to all your listeners to be very careful with that first step and make sure that you know what you're getting into, because this is a world of dependencies. That's a very specific word in this world. Software platforms. You're gonna start paying for this stuff, and you're gonna have to have professionals pick it up and build it into something, and make sure that it's modular as well, right? You want to retrofit certain things because maybe some aspects of the tool that you are building is not going to be useful for you. In fact, it might even weigh you down. So you're going to have that kind of flexibility. And my heart goes out to anyone who goes down on that journey, because it's a lot of late nights of looking at a very bright laptop screen in your living room. And but I love the journey.
Yeah, Bart, I'll tell you what, I gave you a very loaded question and you absolutely nailed that answer, because it is this real stuff. And that's what our show is all about, is these real, open, honest conversations that we're not just having between entrepreneurs, but we're having them out in the public for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all over the world to listen to. So I appreciate those insights. I also do know, you and I had a fun conversation even before we hit record here today. And part of that is, I know that one element of your entrepreneurial DNA is that you are mentally resilient. You are growth minded. These are things that are evident to me in my interactions with you, even up to this point. And part of any entrepreneurial journey, I love talking at the end of these episodes, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, not just subject matter expert, but with those entrepreneurial hats on, I'd love to hear your mindset towards discomfort, towards these hard things that we all need to face, because it's a big topic. I talk about it a lot here on this show, and I know that every single one of our guests has gone through it in their own ways. So talk to our listeners directly about that stuff, because discomfort, things that are hard, is an inevitable part of all of our, not only life journeys, but business journeys.
Ain't that the truth? I have a lot to say about this. I'm even like searching in my mind where do we even start? But let's answer that question in the concept of technology itself, because when we go through dealing with our own discomforts, I don't want to sound like a doom and gloomer, but I think our future is fated for only that. That is the new normal. When you had to learn Zoom and figure out how to start the Zoom, remember the Zoom during the COVID? We're all there now. And it's probably only going to get even more demanding of us, no matter how many AI tools get thrown into your face. You will have to have some kind of digital literacy ahead. And if my pain point in transition into tech is any benchmark, I think there's going to be a lot of people feeling that same pain. So, having that said, I think every expert that ever lived was at one point a beginner, right? And my journey is no different than anyone else's that decide to go into a venture deeper, or something that's foreign or complex or not even well understood by yourself or even the general public. But the journey is an honorable one, and something we should kind of hold sacred to our hearts. Not to sound too touchy-feely here, but I really do mean what I say here. To be an entrepreneur, literally, is to seek adventure, because that's actually the origin of the word. I actually love the story of the origin of the word entrepreneur. It's actually 2 Latin words put together. Entre, meaning to swim out to, and pendres, which is to grab or to grasp. and it was coined by a French economist, 1800 or something like that, because he was angry at Adam Smith in 1776. So, if you're an entrepreneur and you like that title for yourself, discomfort is where you are going to operate in. And more time than any, it will be swimming in tools, most likely technology-based tools, right? And for someone who had no tech background, who actually went to go get educated in it, I still did not do all of the bells and whistles. I had to have a technical co-founder to do the real heavy lifting involved. And that's perfectly okay, I think. Every entrepreneur's story, the legends that we speak of to this day, were learning on the fly, but their enthusiasm and their belief in themselves got them over that hump. But we're living in a very unprecedented time in that you can harness technology without fully even understanding the foundations of how it works. And this is an incredible opportunity. There are people who are running e-commerce sites who have never had to learn a single word of code, but they still had to learn that platform. And so this is a journey that's very dear to my heart. And I sympathize with anyone who actually has to jump in with both feet or, learn while they're, on their hands and knees on the ground. But it's an honorable journey.
Yeah, really well said. With a bonus invisible hand economics reference here today that probably will go unnoticed by most, but not by this economics and finance geek. So, yeah. Bart, I'm loving it. Loving this. It is that real life practical stuff. And it's something I say so frequently here on this show, but I think it's important for listeners everywhere to embrace this stuff, that these are things we talk about behind closed doors. And the fact that we have such generous guests and entrepreneurs who come on and have these in public, Bart, this is the real stuff that I'm so grateful we get to share it with our listeners. And that's why my last question of every episode, it's always the same. It's the only question that I ask every single guest, and I never know where they're going to take it. And Bart, for you, I genuinely have no idea which direction you'll take it, because you're a man of many interests and knowledge and passions and also insights. And that question is, we talked about so much very important stuff here today: privacy, technology, the entrepreneurial mindset, resilience, being adaptable, learning, so many of these important things. But with all of that in mind, and knowing where our audience is, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different levels of their own growth journeys, what's that one takeaway? What's the one thing that you hope everyone walks away from today's session with and they say, you know what? Bart's the one who pushed me. I'm going to do this thing, or I'm going to consider this thing and turn it into action.
Sure. Curiosity is a magical thing. It reveals more about your personality and your identity than you think, right? Whatever you're Googling, whatever you're nerding out on, says a lot about your headspace. And that shouldn't be something that should be ignored. To be honest, I believe that for me and almost any other business owner out there, that the action almost came naturally when no contemplation was necessary. It's that first step, right? The buying the book, taking the class, sketching out that first diagram, imagining the possibilities. I think this is part of the adventure that, some of us actually make it sound too poetic, whereas others make it sound too dry. I like to go right there in the middle. And if I look back, what led me here was pure curiosity. How do I solve this? This is a question that somebody's been asking me in 1,000 different ways over 1,000 different times. And now that I sit here at this very moment, I don't think that number is actually exaggerated. I've handled somewhere between 1,500 to 1,700 cases in my career. And it's so popular that I could almost predict when someone's going to ask me, will this be on my record? And follow your curiosity, follow that voice in your head. And then it only takes really just a small step. You don't have to sign up for a giant degree. You don't have to start learning search query language like I find myself doing, 7 months into it. follow that curiosity. And I think that's all it really takes, because it's not going to feel like you're contemplating. You're not going to make T-charts. And I think that's probably what's going to help people out.
Yeah, Bart, I'll tell you what, I didn't tell you this before we hit record here today, but this is a milestone episode for us. This is episode 850 in this show's history, and nobody has ever taken that question in that direction. The way you just articulated that, I think whether people feel like they're on the right path and they're looking for that validation, or even for all those entrepreneurs out there saying, gosh, what am I meant to do? What's my business idea? What's the population that I'm meant to serve? That answer that you just shared with us, that's not knowledge, that's wisdom. And I think it's so profound and something that is something we can all take action on by being curious about ourselves and really letting our natural curiosities guide us. So really well stated in all of that. You are a wealth of knowledge. I so appreciate that, Bart. I know that we talked about Record Fixer a bit here today, and I feel like it's an incredible product. It's an incredible solution. Listeners will be keen to go deeper down the Record Fixer journey if they want to see how the tech works and what it can do for them, but also your own entrepreneurial journey. Drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here to find out all the great things that you're up to?
Yeah, thank you for that. Honestly, everything is right there on recordfixer.com. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, no matter where you are in the footer, you'll see links to the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube, the Facebook. If you want to look me up, I'm on LinkedIn, Bart Kaspero, Kaspero, Bart like the cartoon, Bart Simpson. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find. Even if you Google my first name and my last name, easily my legal identity will pop up, as well as references to Record Fixer and all that sort of thing. So I welcome anybody to reach out if they have any more questions regarding this interview or even anything outside of it.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are making it as easy as possible to find Bart's entire criminal history. No, I'm just kidding. All those links and so much more down in the show notes. Check those links. We're dropping a link directly to recordfixer.com, as well as all the socials, as well as Bart's personal LinkedIn. If you want to reach out, thank him for being so generous in today's episode, or even just connect with an amazing entrepreneur. Having had the chance to interact with Bart here today, this is someone who loves what he does. It puts a smile on his face. I joked with him before we hit record that he's not your typical lawyer, and he totally sees that he is a special breed, and that's why we've invited him here on the show. So Bart, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It was great.